My cheating girlfriend is 7 months pregnant, and I found out the kid isn't mine. I kicked her out, and people are saying that I'm a monster for doing that to a pregnant woman with nowhere to go. We've just moved across the country, both in our 30s, for what seemed like a fresh start. I'd been offered a well-paying job in a city with a lower cost of living and a good reputation for raising families. It all seemed perfect, especially since she's 7 months pregnant. I was still wrapping my head around that part. She'd told me she was expecting a few months ago, which shocked me since we'd been careful. But after the surprise wore off, I was thrilled. I just finished paying off my house, our finances were solid, and I had a promising career ahead. It felt like the universe was aligning just right. But lately, she's been distant. At first, I chalked it up to pregnancy hormones, so I tried to give her space, reassuring myself it was just part of the process. Then, during breakfast, she was quieter than usual, barely touching her food, her gaze avoiding mine. I asked if something was wrong, only for her to snap at me, saying she didn't owe me answers to everything. Her words stung, but I let it go since I was running late for work. Around noon, I got a text asking if I could come home early because she needed to talk. She insisted it couldn't wait until the end of the day. I felt a knot in my stomach. This didn't sound like the woman I'd moved across the country with. I wrapped up my work, cleared it with my boss, and even picked up sandwiches on the way, hoping to make whatever this conversation was a little easier. When I got home, I noticed her eyes were red and swollen as if she'd been crying. I barely had a chance to put the food down before she dropped the bombshell. While I'd been pulling 14-hour days at the lab, she'd met someone else on a night out with work friends. She didn't sugarcoat it. They'd slept together, not just once but several times over a couple of weeks. Her reasoning? That I wasn't around enough, always tired, and she'd needed someone's attention. She said the guy had told her he was using ultra-thin condoms, and she didn't realize the truth until afterward. The timeline matched, and suddenly, my excitement about becoming a father turned to a sickening dread. My anger flared, and without thinking, I threw her sandwich in the trash. I couldn't even look at her. I grabbed my keys, walked out, and drove to a friend's place, trying to cool down, but nothing helped. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal or the realization that this child might not even be mine. The next morning, I returned and demanded a prenatal paternity test. She protested, said it was pointless and cruel, but eventually she relented. I booked it for the following week and stayed at my friend's place in the meantime, avoiding her and the wreckage of what I'd thought was our future. When the day came, I drove us there in tense silence, her sobbing and apologizing the entire way. The test was over quickly, and I dropped her off before going back to my friends. Today, the results came in, and I am not the father. A wave of numbness washed over me. I drove us back home, barely processing her begging me to reconsider, saying that I couldn't just leave her homeless and alone so far from her family, this close to her due date. She kept saying that she loved me, that she wanted us to raise her baby together, because she believed it was the only chance her child would have at a decent life. Her words felt hollow, just a cruel reminder of how deeply she'd shattered any trust I'd had. I couldn't stay there. Not with the nursery we'd decorated and every reminder of the life I thought we'd have together. I ended up in my car, parked in an empty field, just staring at the horizon, numb. I called my boss, told him what had happened, and he offered his support, telling me to take as much time as I needed. Hours slipped by as I sat there, alone, replaying every moment, every promise, every plan we'd made, now turned to ash. Eventually, I switched my phone back on to a flood of missed calls and messages from her family, even my friends who were worried about me. My friend told me to come over, that I shouldn't be alone, but I couldn't bring myself to go back to the house or face the reality of what lay inside. Everything I'd built, every future plan, was gone in an instant. Now I'm just lost, unable to decide the next move. She's begging for forgiveness. Her family is asking me to reconsider. But after everything, is there even a way forward? What am I supposed to do? Update 1. I'd taken a few days off work to figure things out. But instead of cooling off, every second away from the house only made me angrier. The betrayal, the lies, it was like every plan we'd made together was mocking me. If that wasn't enough, her family started pestering me nonstop, begging me to forgive her, saying she was just scared and made a mistake, that stress can make you do crazy things. They were blowing up my phone, guilt-tripping me, and insisting I shouldn't abandon her and her child in a city they barely knew. Well, I couldn't take it anymore. I went back to the house, determined to settle this once and for all. When I got there, she was in the nursery, the room we had designed together, looking at the crib I'd assembled piece by piece. She looked at me and actually had the audacity to say, "I know this is hard for you, but I love you, and we can still raise this baby as a family." I nearly laughed in her face. Raise her kid? The kid she conceived with a random stranger while I was busting my ass at work? I told her bluntly that any shred of family died the moment she decided to go to someone else's bed. She sobbed, pulling out every card in the book, saying she didn't know what to do and that I was being heartless. Heartless. Like I was the villain here. Then, she dropped another bombshell. She hadn't actually cut contact with the guy. She said, "I just needed someone to talk to after you left." She admitted he'd been texting her nonstop, still trying to be there for her and the baby. She tried to spin it like she was the victim in all this, that she needed comfort. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't just a mistake. This was an ongoing betrayal, and she was acting like I was crazy for not being understanding. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A message from her mother. "You should be ashamed of yourself, abandoning a pregnant woman and your own child like this." My own child. She'd gone and told her entire family that the baby was mine, making me out to be some deadbeat walking away from his responsibilities. Now her entire family was dragging my name through the mud. I called her out on it right there, and she just stammered, saying she needed support and that they wouldn't understand if they knew the truth. I was furious and told her she had exactly 24 hours to pack her things and get out of my house, and that if she so much as tried to contact me or my family again, I'd get a restraining order. She tried to keep crying, clinging to me, telling me she had nowhere else to go, that she'd do anything if I just stayed. But I was done. I was done being the fool, done pretending that we could somehow sweep this under the rug and play happy family. As of now, she's out, supposedly staying with a friend, but her family's still messaging me, calling me every name under the sun, saying I'm destroying her life and leaving her to fend for herself. She's tried to text me, calling herself hormonal and saying she'd been scared of being a mom. Like that excuses any of it. I'm honestly considering blocking her and every last one of her relatives. I've never been this furious in my life. Final update. I spoke with a lawyer about all my options to make sure everything was legally airtight. I wanted to confirm I had the right to kick her out, and also asked about sending cease and desist letters to her family for smearing my name online. We even arranged to send them copies of the paternity test to shut down any doubt about the situation. The morning after it all went down, I went over to the place she was staying, bringing my friend along for backup. As soon as she saw me, she waddled over, hugging me and crying, begging me not to end things. I kept my stance that she needed to leave. I handed her a plane ticket I'd bought and told her to gather her things so I could drop her off at the airport. Unfortunately, no trains to Horseville. After a lot more tears, she finally packed a suitcase. I loaded it into the car and we drove to the airport with my friend, who stayed as a witness because, let's be real, you can never be too careful. Once we got there, she sat down still crying but calming down a bit since there were other people around. Then she hit me with, "What am I supposed to do now? Jobless, homeless, and a single mother." I almost said, "That's Zach's problem, not mine," but instead told her to go find the father, wished her well, and left. Her family has since called to apologize and asked me to reconsider. I declined, and they wished me well. For now, I'm just focusing on work, trying to catch up and move forward. Thanks for all the messages and support.